Hi, everybody, and welcome to Bright Founders Talk at Dami. Dami is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. This is another episode of our podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs, business owners, and experts from various industries. They are happy to share their stories and advice with us. Today, we are happy to welcome Anders Härén, who is Chief Product Officer at VOYD. Anders, hello. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Before we jump into a discussion of VOYD, all the details of your company, the world of media production and distribution, let's find out who is Anders outside the title of Chief Product Officer. What facts, or maybe only one fact about yourself, can you share with our viewers?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Sweden. I'm 42 years old. Got a family, 3 kids, and besides loving to work with tech and been doing that for a long time, I also love to play death metal. So that's maybe an unknown fact about me. I really like the more extreme music.
That's impressive. So your band, this part of your life, is it something that helps you to fight with the difficulties, solve problems which you have at work, or do you relax there? Or maybe playing is like a muse for new ideas at VOYD?
That's a good question. It's definitely an outlet. I mean, it's any kind of music, I think, is a brilliant outlet for just doing something else. And while you're playing music, you can't really think of anything else. At least I can't. So it's very meditative. And I don't know why it ended up being death metal. It's just always been the kind of music I like.
Interesting. As you said, you have earlier, we've talked in emails, and you said that you've consulted co-founders on their journey at creating VOYD. So you know what the first steps of the company, from what they started and what was the plan actually at the beginning. Can you tell a brief story to our audience about VOYD and actually how exactly VOYD works?
VOYD, if we go back a few years, like 2017 when we started, it was called Showify, and it was about helping musicians reach out to their audience through video. So, for instance, if you're a band or an artist in any way, you can just hit live on your phone, and you could broadcast from like backstage or from the kitchen table or from the concert, and then you could get feedback and money directly from your fans. So as a way for artists to fund their creative endeavor. So that's how it started. And then they realized that like the music industry is not so much about music, it's a lot about labels and rights. So even though the musicians really liked the idea, it was really hard to get growth. So you have to negotiate with all the labels and booking agencies and so on. And that was around the time the pandemic hit. So suddenly everyone wanted to go online or had to go online to do video, like personal coaches and fitness instructors and lecturers and theaters. So suddenly there was a huge demand to be able to broadcast and sell your video. So then we pivoted towards like let anyone who wants to sell their videos online use VOYD. So that's the short of it, and right now that's how it works really. If you're a creator in Sweden, Norway, or Germany, you can sign up for free. You upload your video, set your price, and share it with your followers, and they can pay for your video.
Okay, and did you feel that COVID make a great impact for your company story, for the whole industry?
Definitely streaming as a whole went up during COVID. People definitely had to explore. First of all, if you're some kind of creator, you had to explore getting your content online instead of doing like regular shows, for instance. and all of us who consume content really increased our streaming as we were locked in and we couldn't leave the house and so on. So for the streaming business, it was a positive trend. Obviously, everything else about the pandemic wasn't so good, but in this instance, it really helped VOYD to get growth.
Yeah, from speaking with different entrepreneurs from different industries, I personally noted that the role of COVID, the impact of COVID was or negative or positive one. And in your case, luckily, it's a good one. But didn't you have the concerns or fears that as soon as the COVID restrictions are removed, you will lose video creators?
Yeah, definitely. And that's something I saw when I joined VOYD, because I could see that first of all, the company has, like, since we pivoted, we became a bit of the offering became too wide. We were trying to accommodate musicians and enterprises and theaters and lecturers and YouTubers and personal fitness and so on, so on. So I saw two things that we needed to adjust. First of all, we needed to slim down the value proposition. So, because in my experience, it's not a good idea to be everything for everyone. It's usually you get a kind of an unclear value proposition, and you tend to build a very wide product. And wide products are hard and cost a lot to maintain in a good way. So that was one of my concerns, and the other, just as you mentioned, there would be a risk of a backlash when the society opened up again. A lot of the creators would leave VOYD to go back to doing offline performances. So what we did then was narrow it down. Basically, we should be a service for creators who, before the pandemic, were already doing video content online, who are doing it during the pandemic, and who will keep doing video online after the pandemic. And that means YouTubers, maybe some podcasters, TikTokers, Twitch. So basically, trying to become the service for those who are already decided to do video online, really.
Okay, we mentioned that COVID was a great challenge for different industries, and it made a different impact on each industry. And what are the challenges did you face, and what impact these challenges made on VOYD?
It's been it is still a very strange time in the world. I would say we had two black swans in a row. So first we had a major pandemic affecting the whole of society globally, and then shortly after there was the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which also had very large effects on the world outside Ukraine and Russia. We have an economic recession, so the world is really in flux and has been for several years now, and will continue. We also have the threat of climate change that makes us that we need to change everything. So I think that's the society and the world we live in, and that affects everything and everyone in ways we still don't really know. Smart people will write books about this in 30 years, what happened. But if you look at VOYD, I would say our challenge, besides all the factors I mentioned, is the matureness of the creator economy. That is something that is not in our control, but we're very dependent on the matureness of the creator economy. It's really simple. Like, if you're a creator, any type of creator, you're doing something creative, whether it's music or video, or if you're creating art in some way. I think that if you're good enough, and there's a lot of people are really good, you should be able to make a living out of that. But that's the first matureness, that you have to feel like like I'm gonna take the step, I'm gonna try to do it. It's possible, and that is something that will happen over time. So it's not a light switch. So we can see the matureness of creators slowly rising, and then you have the matureness of the buyers to like say that it's I'm gonna pay a monthly fee to support this creator because I really think that they should keep doing this. So, and that is the most difficult thing for VOYD to time this market matureness. I believe in 10 years the creator economy is going to be like it's fundamental. It's nothing strange. It's very obvious that creators get paid for what they do, but we're not there yet. So that is the main trick for us to truly the timing of this shift in the world economy.
I also believe that those time of challenges and problems and generally difficult times, they make us to be more flexible and to see the opportunities which even in such difficult times are open for us. Okay, so let's move smoothly to technology questions. So VOYD has a platform and also you have a mobile app. What technologies do you use in developing those products?
Yeah, so we went for an approach which is a bit similar to Netflix because we're a streaming service and anyone can sign up and start to sell their content, and that means a lot of people will start streaming content. But the challenge is that we never know, like we can't estimate really who's going to have a huge number of streams. So we have to have a platform that scales very smartly. So we chose fully event-driven architecture, and we're running it in Kubernetes on Google Cloud. So that's the foundation of the architecture, fully event-driven. And then we are making microservices in Node.js. And we're actually running TypeScript full across the stack, so everything is written in TypeScript, and we have a monorepo where we share the types between backend and front end. So that means we can also have like full stack developers. So there's really anyone can jump in wherever in the stack, which makes it highly effective. And then for the applications, we're doing React and React Native. That's the stack.
Have you always used those programming languages, or there was a moment when you switched from one to another?
Definitely a moment of switch for VOYD. So basically, and this is something I think everyone who has been running a startup scale-up or who are running a startup scale-up, they should recognize this, that because the startup journey is usually some kind of, you tend to pivot over time. You think you're going to build this, and then you tweak it, and then, or you tweak a lot, like you pivot and like, oh, we're going to do something completely else. And over time, give it at least 2 years, all those tweaks and pivots, they will be visible in your code, because you probably won't have time to refactor all the time and like clean up all those old dependencies. So over time, you tend to get a pretty nasty platform with a lot of dead ends, so to speak. And that was pretty much where we ended up with VOYD. That when I joined in 2021, it was apparent that like we finally figure out what the product should be. So the product was like pretty solid, but the tech underneath the product were like riddled with bad code over like being created over 4 years or something by different developers. And that was running .NET backend and Angular front end on AWS. So we made a decision that we're going to do a complete overhaul. We're going to hire our own team to build a brand new platform, and slowly, while in production, we're going to switch parts until we're fully over to the new stuff. So it's been a very interesting project.
What can make you change actually the language to the new one? For example, if a new language appear, will you change it immediately? What exactly your criteria for choosing the language?
The criteria for choosing the current languages, and I would say in general from my experience over time, because I've been doing this for many years, first of all, you have to pick something that is supporting your product, supporting your business model. So for instance, being a streaming service, this seemed like a good setup for us, whereas some other company may choose Java, or a third company may choose something completely else. I would say, first of all, look at the use cases of the product and look at the scale, because that's another fault some people tend to make, that they build something that is working in a narrow use case, and then as a startup, a scale-up, you want to really take off, you want growth, and then things start to break. So try to look at languages and architecture that support the use case now and as you scale. And then I would say choose languages which has a positive community, like a big community, not a bleeding edge technology that is in beta that will potentially take several months or years before it's like truly up and running, or like it has a very narrow community. So try to pick something that is broadly supported, because that means it's going to have a rapid version, like new versions coming out, and people are going to fix bugs and so on. So you kind of, even though you're a small team, you're a part of a really big team, because it's all the developers all across the world. Finally, you might want to look at the market, like depending on where you want to grow your team, like if it's in your current city or country or abroad, you kind of want to look at like where, like, are there a lot of TypeScript developers right now, or is that a trend that was over 5 years ago? And also you could look at like, is every company out there looking for React developers right now? Because that means your competition when you try to get the top talent is gonna be a bit hard. So I would say those factors, and then you have to just weigh them against each other.
Thank you. I think these tips are really interesting for our audience, for our viewers who are only in the beginning of their entrepreneurial journey or development phase. And as we've talked about the languages, I want to touch the topic about the development team. What challenges do you see when scaling the development team? Is it a big problem nowadays in general?
I've done this several times. This is my third time like building and scaling a tech company. So I've learned hopefully from most mistakes, and I have probably some new mistakes that I haven't made yet. But I think there are some really good best practices for scaling your tech teams. And so it's best that's simple to Google. There's so many good blog posts, and I think sticking to some kind of agile methodology in the bottom, where whether it's Scrum or Scrumban, like don't reinvent the wheel, because if you're gonna scale Scrum, there's some excellent guides on that. Like what tends to happen is usually pretty easy to be two teams. It's quite easy to be in sync. Something happens when you get past 3 teams. Because what you want to do is you want to create strong teams that take responsibility for whether like their product or feature space. But what happens if you build strong teams is you might end up with silos, where like the teams really only care about their own part, and it may be like 2 people digging a tunnel from 2 ends and just hoping that they will meet in the middle. So as you scale over 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and beyond teams, you really need to focus on the cross-team alignment. And there are some really good best practices there with like Scrum of Scrums and some kind of overarching product leadership where like representatives from all the teams meet often. So I think like there are so many like good principles. I think the big challenge has been, how do you slice your product or products? How do you slice that into different teams and different responsibilities? That is I think has been the main challenge, and it's both depending on the product or the products that the company has, but it's also very dependent on the tech stack. So if you, for instance, have a very monolithic architecture, it's gonna be a bit of a pipe dream that you want to have like 10 autonomous teams running fully by their own and just shipping things, because there's going to be so many dependencies. So then you might want to rethink how you you might want to go towards a micro service architecture just to avoid it. So I think that is the main and most interesting challenge. How do you split up your offering and your teams?
You said that you've been scaling the team for 3 times, so you have a profound experience, and you've done it in different periods of time. Do you feel the high competition for hunting a high qualified experts in development nowadays?
I think I've been doing this for around 12 years, like hiring and scaling tech people. I would say it's always been hard. So I wouldn't say it's harder now than it was 10 years ago. But I also say it's become easier. And I would say the remote work situation and the offshoring and smart shoring. So it's both ways. Yes, the competition has grown, but the possibilities have also grown, because you can get a good developer across on the other side of the world right now. So I would say it's they kind of cancel each other out. It's kind of the same as it's been for a long time. And if you want to attract top talent, you need, as always, to have a really good offer. And it's not necessarily the money on the table. It's about the journey that you want to take with this person. Like it's what they're jumping onto, what kind of journey. And that's so much more than the paycheck. It's the company culture, it's the values.
I saw on LinkedIn that you have 27 employees at VOYD. Do you have a plan for scaling the company, for example, for this year or for next 2 years, or it's just your preference in having such a smaller team?
We're very happy with the size between 20 to 30 people. And because frankly, that's like our value proposition and our products, that's around what it will take to run these. So there's no self interest or benefit into scaling just because you want to become a lot of people. So I think we're quite happy around between 20 or 35 or so. It also makes a lot of things so much easier when you're a small team, to keep the culture and to keep everyone in the loop. So I would say we're pretty happy. Always looking for top talent, obviously, and there will be sometimes you have to make an exception, even though you're not hiring. You see someone and you realize you might need that person, but it's also a continuous work to make sure you have the top talent on board. So like it's both adding people and unfortunately letting people go if they can't live up to the expectations. So we'll be around this size.
Okay, it's interesting because mostly people are more about the scaling the team to become a bigger company, but I think it's also and maybe easier to keep the company culture, and it's also like more friendly atmosphere, even more family atmosphere to have like such a smaller team. Okay, as you said, you've been hiring different tech talents for 12 years. So you've met different people. What was the biggest challenge with meeting and dealing with the different kind of people? What the greatest lesson you learned from this?
Yeah, this is a good question. There are so many dimensions, but I would say my criteria for hiring have kind of stabilized over the last specifically over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think first of all, everyone will look for competence. And that is always the easiest one to tick that box. You can in several ways discover if this person has the right competence for the job. And the second factor is going to be like culture fit. Is this a good person to work with? Like, will they fit in the culture? And I'm not talking culture as like country or so. I'm talking about that intangible thing, like the culture in the company, how you communicate and like the atmosphere, typically called culture fit. So that's obviously going to be something you're looking for. I would add two other things that I think is very important. So first of all, I would say drive is very important. I tend to respect people who are really nerdy about their competence zone, whether they're really good at UX design or apps or just optimizing database queries or DevOps. Like if you're truly nerdy and driven about like becoming the best at what you do, those kind of people is what you want, and because that rubs off as well. So you get a very, very good culture, and people will increase their competence a lot faster in that kind of climate. And finally, I would say passion, because over the years, it seems a bit like developers have become some kind of mercenaries, like guns for hire, like put them in, they can work in one industry for a few years and then you put them in another industry. And I'm not interested in those types of people who will just see this as a job for 2 or 3 years. Like I want people who are actually committed into what we're trying to do, because if you're truly committed, if you're passionate about whatever the company is trying to achieve, that will also have very good effects on how you do your work, the kind of responsibility you take, and the kind of climate you get within the organization. So I would say over the years, I've kind of increased the importance of the two last. Like don't settle if they have competence and culture fit, because you need the other two as well.
It's interesting. So you mentioned already during our interview the tip about choosing the language and also the tips about scaling the team. What advice can you give additionally to our first-time entrepreneurs or tech experts?
Okay, for first-time entrepreneurs, I would say, first of all, like just do it. I think the world you have to look at it as, is the glass half empty or half full? You can look at it half empty. You can see all the bad things happening in the world, and you don't even have to look far. There's bad stuff happening everywhere. But you can also look at what possibilities are appearing. And if you take that view, even though I know it could be hard, and especially hard for instance, if you're in Ukraine right now, I my strongest sympathies to you and the work you do. But in all contexts, there are possibilities. So if you're an entrepreneur out there right now, there should be plenty of interesting possibilities. And I think the tech climate is so fantastic now. Like there are so many technologies and tools at your disposal. Just look at AI, for instance. There are so many things you can do out of the box. You don't even need any engineering competence. Like there are so many open source. So I think if you have an idea, and especially if you're young, you don't have any, you can basically work around the clock. Just do it. But I will also say that if you're an entrepreneur, you should really try to find your wingman or wing woman, your partner, because it's gonna be a very tough journey. Like I can say that with 100% certainty. Like no matter how good your idea is, it's gonna be a tough journey. So try to find that the person that complements you. So if you're a tech person, there's so many great technology ideas lying on the startup graveyard because they didn't have a business model. So really try to find someone who understands business and who understands customers and that part. And if you are that business person, sooner or later, you're gonna need technical competence, even if you can hack a good prototype from the start. So try to find that tech whiz to partner with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, to sum up, guys, just be optimistic, just do it, and find the right people. Anders, thank you for spending your time with us and for these priceless, I can say, tips for bright founders, talk listeners, and viewers.
Thank you.